to Cinema Smackdown on Sunday, June, what is it today, the 9th?
Something like that.
Something like that.
We'll go with that.
June 9th for 2019. I keep saying 2019 because every time I see you, I wonder if you're writing 1986 on your checks.
Oh, well, that's an improvement from last week when I was still writing 1975, so...
Well, as a confident 55-year-old man, I can see how that may have been an issue over time.
Inside joke.
Not that inside. One only has to look at you to get that joke.
One only needs to follow me on Facebook.
Or over to Farmer Cree. Where was it that this...
Oh, this was at a Provigo.
A
Provigo where I was offered possible discounts for 55 plus, provided I was 55 plus, which I'm not. Nowhere near it, but...
Nowhere near. I hear you.
I'll go with that. I'll go with nowhere near.
I like this as a starting point. So our show is Cinema Smackdown. My name is Michael Brody. I am joined today by Shane Simmons and our recurring occasional co-host...
What?
Tess McCrae, who is not in the field today covering a story, but has actually managed to get into the booth with us.
It's a rare moment for us all, and I hope you're all very, very excited. I know I am.
I mean, I couldn't be more excited.
I know.
I'm positively sweating with excitement.
You couldn't even keep your shirt on your body. It just popped right off.
It did just pop right off. We are...
Thank God this is radio, because there was nudity involved earlier today. So.
For those who may be listening to an archived version of this show, today is what I would probably call the first day of summer we've had this year in Montreal. It's
the first day where you remember why you don't enjoy summer in Montreal as much.
Oh, I go the other way.
And we work at a radio station that goes, air conditioning, what?
No, I still love Montreal summer. That was a joke.
Yeah.
Montreal, I was joking. Don't hate me.
Don't hate me, Montreal.
Don't leave me.
Don't evict me.
It's almost time for Festival Fest.
Festival Fest is already festing.
We'll get to that on the ad break. That's what our ad break is for today. A bunch of festival talk. All right, well, before we get to the festival talk, let's talk a little bit about the movie experience, the going out, leaving your home experience and actually going to a cinema. Something that has...
You remember theaters, people? It used to be a thing.
It's a bit of a dying art if you're not going to see this year's mega Marvel movie event. There are movies every other week of the year that are in cinemas. People don't remember that, but it is a reality.
And sometimes, if you go to the theater enough over the years, you come away with anecdotes, more so than you do staying at home, Netflix, and chilling.
Exactly.
Well, it depends how you Netflix and chill, to be fair.
Or who you're Netflix and chilling with.
Exactly.
All right,
who you're Netflix and chilling on. Let's
cancel our main thought today on what we were going to talk about. And Tess, why don't you just give us 45 or so minutes of Netflix and chill, the late night version.
Who I've Netflix and chilled on.
I would love to hear some Netflix.
The Tess McCrae stories.
Who got to distract you from the Bird Box?
That is a weirdly apt title to choose.
That is a very accurate title, I would say.
That's perfect. And if ever a movie deserved to be ignored more, it's probably Bird Box.
Yeah. Aren't you going to watch the Redux cut without the Lac Megantic footage?
Nope. But I would watch the Redux version in which 56-year-old Sandra Bullock is not portrayed as a glowing young mother-to-be. Because that is the highest point of science fiction in that film. That's how I see it.
Was that film supposed to be science fiction?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I meant science fact. The majority of what you see in Bird Box is true, was researched, and happened.
It's all real.
It's all real.
Yeah.
I watched Black Mirror. It's all real. It's all real. So Shane, why don't you start us off? Tell us something that has happened to you in an actual cinema at a time when you've been out and experienced the real world.
Well, speaking of warm days, it was back in the 90s. If you know if it's still functioning, is the Dollar Cinema still working up at that little dead mall? Yeah. So they used to run double features at the Dollar Cinema. Fairly recent films, recent enough that one day we went to see a double feature of The Last Boy Scout and La Femme Nikita. So great double feature for $1. And it turned out it was the first warm, like really quite hot day of the summer. So we were dying to get into some air conditioning because it was just sweltering. So we got in, and they turned the air conditioning on for the first time that year. Only
Oh.
only someone had hit the wrong button, so they turned the heat on instead. So we got into the theater, and it was a brain-melting oven like you've never seen before. My two companions immediately stripped down to their underwear to sit in the theater seats, which is something I would never do because I know how filthy theater seats are, especially in dollar cinemas. But so they added to the filth, and we immediately complained to the management and said, you kind of turned the heat on instead. And they're like, oops, our bad. So while they were trying to correct that, the movie started. And if you remember the opening of The Last Boy Scout, it begins in torrential rainfall. And we were just grasping at the screen going, water! Water!
Wow.
So, luckily, about 10 minutes into the film, it started to correct. But if we had to sit through that at that temperature for much longer, I think we would have all suffered brain damage. It was that hot.
Well, I like your thoughts on it being a brain melt experience while watching from Nikita, when we all know the real brain melt Luc Besson film is Lucy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Valerian and the City of a Gajillion Planets.
He's had a lot of brain melters in recent years.
The last 10 years, his entire output is, dear God, why?
What's
Why?
happening?
Yeah, and
Every decision is wrong.
because I couldn't remember the title of the movie Lucy, I just looked it up, and it turns out there's a Lucy 2 in development, as well as Columbiana 2.
Oh boy.
Movies that definitely left me with questions about what was going to happen next.
Oh, I thought you were going to say what our role in the universe is. Gave you an existential crisis.
No,
as
I
you realize that this is what society has brought us to.
I definitely watched those and thought, there's no point to living. Both of those movies left me with that feeling. Unlike Femme Nikita, which was an excellent movie, especially on a completely clean first view with no knowledge of what that was. I mean, at this point, we are nearly 30 years past that film, and am I remembering that right? Yeah, that's math. We're almost 30 years into
we're about there.
the release, and there has now been an English language version of it, multiple ripoffs, and an entire television series based on the Nikita.
There's also either Hong Kong or Korean version of it as well.
Well, that's what I meant by remakes.
Yeah. There's
But that first viewing of that particular movie, Nikita, it opens hard. It is a harsh opening sequence of drug addicts being raided by cops and a very vicious action moment, followed by detox and assassination training. And it's a good film.
It's fantastic. I love that film. But it is one of those occasions where you see the earlier work of a director and you have to go, what happened?
I have a feeling that what happened was he started making Fifth Element. And at some point in the process of making Fifth Element, Chris Tucker wandered in and said, here's what I want to do with my character. And Luc Besson said, I don't understand why I would ever put that in a movie. And Chris Tucker said, well, look, while we're talking it over, why don't you just take this pill? And from that point on, we had the other Luc Besson.
I don't know. I think part of the problem was he had an embarrassment of riches of ideas to the point where he just started writing down on envelopes and farm them out to other directors and just put his name on as producer on everything.
Yes.
And it just became too much of a mill, so that when he actually got back to directing, he was still in mill mode.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remembered one thing. I'm not a lover or a hater, but I kind of like big chunks of The Fifth Element with reservations. Yeah, I just mentioned Chris Tucker. That's a lot for me.
I love Chris Tucker in that movie, and I am happy. I will go to my grave defending Chris Tucker's absolutely insane performance.
Okay, you are not welcome here anymore.
I believe that Chris Tucker's performance in that movie reverberated out and ultimately killed Prince. That's what I think really did happen.
It damn near killed me.
Yeah. At any rate, when it comes to I had a point. You made me lose it. It was something to do. Oh, right. I remember now. Luc Besson has a moment in The Fifth Element that is really unearned and terrible. And it has been repeated in pretty much every movie he's made since, which really bothers me because it's unnecessary. And that is the moment where you've been watching. The Fifth Element happens almost in real time, not minute to minute, but in a very short period of time. The characters meet, have a space adventure, and the movie ends. It isn't weeks or months. You kind of see every single interaction that these characters have with each other. So Bruce Willis meets Mila Jovovich half an hour into the movie, and then spends, another 45 minutes to an hour and a half with her. And somewhere near the end of that, they declare their love for each other. And you're like, what now?
Yeah.
Like, you're just in the middle of an adventure. There's no reason for this garbage to be here. But magically we're in love, and that's...
But welcome to movies. They all have
hear
people
you.
randomly falling in love for no
Because it's
reason.
Mila Jovovich wearing about 3 bandages.
Yeah,
So how can you not love that?
Lilu is the perfect being, and she's wearing no clothes. Corbin Dallas
and Bruce Willis is a
random taxi driver
is a hack.
So the point being that every single Luc Besson movie since then, and I might be exaggerating when I say every single one, but more or less every one of them has a scene where, for no reason, in a completely unearned scene, the 2 lead characters turn to each other and go, "Oh my God, I'm in love with you." The worst of which is Valerian, where early in the movie the guy's like, "I think I'm falling in love with you," and she's like, "I don't know you and can't stand you. Why would I care?"
And then nothing happens in their relationship. Lots
yeah.
of random shit gets thrown across the screen. Lots of noise and colors. Nothing actually happens between them, and then it's like, we are in love.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's the Luc Besson way. Every movie has... We're just going to accept that characters in movies fall in love. The end.
He is French, so there he is.
French.
Yeah. Well, early on he got it right in some of his early good films, but...
Absolutely. I love the love story in The Professional.
I especially love... I was going to go, I love the love story in La Dernière Combat, but okay, we'll go with Professional.
They both work in their own way. One quick little shout out to The Fifth Element. I was in a bar 2 weeks ago, and I was chatting with a woman, and she had quite a few tattoos on her arms, and I saw a few of them. They were all genre movie stuff. And on her bicep was a Lilu tattoo. And it took me a moment
What's a Lilu tattoo?
Literally
Like
Mila Jovovich from...
like Mila Jovovich's actual face?
Yes.
Not like the symbol that she had on...
the photorealistic image of Mila Jovovich.
Wow.
And,
I'm into it.
And I'm staring at her tattoos, and I noticed a few of them, and then I noticed that one. And I really, you take a moment, you take a wait, and I said out loud, I said, "Is that goddamn Lilu on your arm?" And she goes, "Why, yes it is." And I said, "From Fifth Element, you have a Fifth Element tattoo." And she said, "Yes, I do." And then she pointed to her shoulder, and she says, "And this is Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn from Lord of the Rings." And I said, "You think I can name check Lilu, but I don't know who Aragorn is?" So that to me was the funniest interaction. It's like, you really didn't need to leap to explaining your other genre tattoos to me. If I get that one, you can at least assume I'm in the realm. Well,
did you get to know her well enough to see her Brad Dourif?
I don't get that reference.
Oh, well, you sink deep enough, you'll find other more obscure Lord of the Rings characters. And,
Lord of the Rings characters, okay. I didn't know that's where you were going with that one. All right.
No, not her Chucky tattoo.
I mean,
that's only for very intimate acquaintances.
Yeah, these days, if you have a Mark Hamill tattoo, it's a Chucky tattoo. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that, yes.
All right, on that note, we're going to do a quick commercial break. Ay. Well, I guess we're not going to have too much trouble getting through the cinema anecdotes if we do 10 minutes of otherwise riffing in between. Yeah, that was a real thing, and that girl was hot.
I mean...
To be honest, the tattoos were like 1 point down, but she was with 4 men, sitting at a table, all being gregarious.
Orgy?
And I was doing trivia that night, and she kept coming over to talk to me, because she was into like the movie stuff and the trivia things. But she kept coming over to talk to me, and there was 50 people in the bar, and I was like, I can't talk to you right now. Okay, I have to correct these sheets. It was pretty funny. It's just like, please come back and talk to me later. And later, she was hammered. And there was no conversation to be had.
Yeah.
In theory, we'll come back, though.
Perhaps she will return.
I will 100% introduce you if it happens.
You want to do a complete inventory of the movie characters all over her body.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't mind.
And we are back on TGLO 1690. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown, and today we're running down actual theatrical experiences, times we've been in a cinema and things have happened to us. And I say we're doing that, and yet
we're on tangents already.
We're only on tangents. Tess, do you have one for us? Anything that's ever happened to you in the cinema?
Nothing has ever happened to me in the cinema. Totally kidding. Obviously. I don't know, it's hard to pick through what's like an interesting story, or, I have so many stories of going to the theater with my friends when I was in high school and just being like very raucous and terrible and ruining the theater experience for the type of person that I now am.
I thought I knew you. You were the one!
But I did go to this is embarrassing, but I lined up opening night and waited in line and then ended up not getting a seat because the theater was overbooked and sat on the stairs of the theater to watch the first Transformers movie, Michael Bay Transformers film.
So you did get in, though.
I got in and sat on the stairs to watch that trash heap of a film.
That's funny. I was at a Guzzo...
Makes for a quick exit.
I was at a Guzzo cinema on the first weekend. I had no interest in seeing it, but I have young nephews and nieces, and my parents wanted to take them, so we all went. And there were people sitting in the aisle, just like you just described from that weekend. I haven't thought about that since that day. And it did not improve my experience sitting through that movie.
I mean, aren't you really not supposed to allow that for all sorts of fire regulations?
They came by and told us to leave, and then the people who were sitting on the steps kind of moved away slightly, and then as soon as they left, we went back to the steps and sat down. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the power of the usher.
Yeah, you weren't successfully ordered around by a 16-year-old?
No. Somehow we didn't find the 16-year-old with terrible acne very intimidating.
The amazing thing is, looking back on it, that is the crowning achievement of Transformers.
I know, it's the best one.
It's the closest to being an actual tolerable movie because every film is 50% worse.
Yeah.
And I, by the way, will
even the one with Marky Mark? Even the one with the...
You mean the two with Marky Mark?
Oh god, there were two with Marky Mark, yeah. That's the one, the first one with Marky Mark is the one where the guy's like... I couldn't believe it when I saw this in the theater. When, I guess, Marky Mark's daughter has this relationship with this older dude, and it's like a masculinity fest of Marky Mark being upset that his daughter's dating someone or whatever. And he's like, oh, you're like 22 or 23 or something, and his daughter's like 16 or 18 or whatever. I don't remember. And he's like, oh, that's illegal. Like, first of all, why is this in the movie at all? Who gives a shit? Secondly, then this guy, the like 24-year-old or whatever who's dating this 16-year-old girl, pulls out a laminated card from his pocket, from his wallet, that has like the written statute on statutory rape, being like, it's not statutory rape because we met before I was 18, so therefore there's a loophole that we can still fuck. I was like, what kind of psychopath is carrying a laminated statutory rape exception law card in his wallet at all times?
One who knows that Mark Wahlberg has a habit of punching people's eyes out because he doesn't like the color of their skin.
Yeah, that's
let
true.
alone
that's
sleeping
true.
with his daughter.
Yeah.
That's a true story, by the way.
Is it?
Oh yeah. Mark Wahlberg
is
a person who beat someone severely in his youth. This is 100% on the books. People know this. He beat someone so severely in his youth for being not white that person lost an eye, and he's like, yeah, I'm really sorry that happened. Oh, yeah, well that makes it all better, doesn't it? Yeah, he's a monster.
Great musician.
I will say that as a musician, he's a hell of an underwear model. Right, so... And now that's our Transformers bit. Or a little bit about that magic franchise that we're so excited to see more of. I mean, especially after the triumph that was Bumblebee. I don't know if any of you saw that, but...
No,
I've been done with Transformers films since the second one.
Yeah, I stopped caring about them after about probably number 4, I think was the last one I saw.
I was 14 minutes into the first one and I was out, but I have watched a few regardless.
Yeah, I've watched them, in the hopes that I would glean some kind of lesson.
Well, I was told that if you like Transformers at all and don't like the movies because you're disappointed in how they were handled, Bumblebee is the movie for you. I heard this before seeing
I heard this as well.
They said it's the good one, it's the this, it's the that. I will argue it's maybe the worst film of the series. It is the most irritating. It is quite a poor film. And to put it on a pedestal as the example of how they could have been good is kind of scary. You know, it's the Big Mama's House 2 of Transformers movies.
Okay. Cool.
At any rate, I guess it's my turn to tell a story about a real life experience in a cinema. Well, I'm just going to mention the most recent one I had. It's not a big deal, but Shane and I attended a screening of Avengers Endgame at a little cinema we have here called the Côte d'Ivoire Cinema. And the wonderful thing about Montreal's Côte d'Ivoire Cinema is that
It's cheap.
Yeah, that is its main
off-peak
selling
movies
point.
are always $5.
Yeah.
So for $5, you can go to a premiere screening of a movie that opened, on that day, and see the newest whatever film. $5. It's pretty great. At any rate, we went to see Avengers Endgame, which was a packed house.
Have you guys already talked about Avengers Endgame on the show?
Not really. You can bring up whatever you want right now. But the point was, we saw it with a packed house of fanatic fans, which means the screening was dead silent. Now, that isn't usually the case with Côte d'Ivoire. People are very happy to scream and yell at that screen in a way I'm mildly uncomfortable with. But at any rate, the Avengers screening was one of those important, everybody is trying to hear every word screenings. And the sound was turned way the hell down.
Oh,
like,
really?
to the point where I was shocked at how quiet it was. So, admittedly, the first 45 minutes of that movie are calm. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you should be able to make out the dialogue. Yeah, and we were having a lot of trouble. So I finally just got annoyed, got up, went and spoke to management, and I said, can you guys turn up the sound? We literally can't hear what they're saying. And the guy says to me, he goes, well, it's in the parameters of the numbers they gave us. And I said, please, turn it up way too high. I'll take the blame, whatever you need. And he even mentioned, it's kind of quiet for 40 minutes. I was like, yes, but we need to hear it. So he grudgingly went to the control room, which was right next to the cinema I was in. I walked over with him. And then I walked back in the cinema, and I audibly heard the sound go doot-doot-doot-doot. And all he did was walk in and just turn a small crank, because in this day and age with digital cinema, it is just that. It's just a little tiny volume button. And suddenly it was fine. But we had endured 40-ish minutes of ridiculously low sound. Mm-hmm. And you could hear other people breathing over the loudest parts of the movie. So, yeah. At any rate, it was nice to realize it's just that easy at this point. They don't need to masterfully recalibrate the whole cinema and come in with...
All you need now is a key to that control panel. You know where it is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's nothing. They essentially... I mean, I don't even know. Are they just streaming this from Hollywood? Do they get any physical media that comes to the cinema? You probably wouldn't even need to. You could probably just download a 30-gigabyte file off the internet and play it, which is essentially what I imagine they would be doing at this point. You just need a high-processor computer. It's just kind of amazing to remember that we used to have to ship
wait for the
100-pound reels of film that occasionally would have to be marked with different titles so they wouldn't get stolen. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, if there was a new Star Wars movie, they couldn't ship it with the title of the movie. They'd have to use code words to ensure that no frisky post office worker decided that he wanted a private screening of Return of the Jedi 2 weeks before it opened.
With his home 35mm projector. And
well, I mean, you can rent these things, or you could at the time. It wouldn't have been impossible. Would have been an interesting draw for the local neighborhood kids.
So that segues naturally enough to my sound story,
right?
Which goes back quite a number of years. Had a friend who worked in a theater out in West Island, so he got to get us certain perks here and there, including once because it was an affiliated cinema. He actually put a premiere at the Imperial on hold until we could get down there by car because we were running late.
You put a little call in.
Yeah, put a call in and said, just hold it, even though the theater was packed with very anxious, impatient people. But for one premiere, which we're really looking forward to, we just couldn't wait to see Cutthroat Island. A pirate film back when pirate films were failing. If anyone ever bothered to cobble together another pirate film, this was pre-Pirates of the Caribbean, which was the one that proved, you can actually make a profitable pirate film again. Imagine, because it was one of those dead genres.
I think the previous time there was a profitable pirate film, it starred Errol Flynn.
Yeah, pretty much. Certainly wasn't a Walter Matthau one. the Roman Polanski.
I love that movie, and it is a terrible movie, but I have a lot of affection for it.
So going in, we knew it was going to be it's a Rennie Harlan film, so big action, lots of booms and bangs. So
he had made like 4 pretty great movies.
Oh yeah. So this is why we were looking forward to it. A Gina Davis versus Frank Langella period action film sounds like a lot of fun.
It sounds like Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, a little bit. So going in, our friend told the projectionist, for our screening, turn it up. We want it loud. So we sat there for the movie. One of the first big action films involves a lot of stuff exploding on a dock during a horse and carriage chase. And at that moment, I realized I'm listening to the loudest noise I have ever heard in a movie theater in my life, and then it blew out the speakers.
Oh, no.
So it went from being the loudest thing I'd ever heard in the theater to dead silence, to the point where I thought I might have had a stroke. I might have gone deaf. Any number of things. So in this dead quiet theater, I just had to say aloud, just to prove that my hearing was still there. I said, "Hello?" Which got a massive laugh from the theater. And I realized, okay, I'm not deaf. Good. And then the sound kicked back in a little while later. But then it happened again during another bar fight type scene where someone crashed through a table. Boom, the speakers are out again.
That's pretty
so we were doing some major damage to the equipment at that theater, which is all gone and torn down now anyway. So I guess we didn't do that long-term of damage after all.
That's very funny. You're listening to CJLS 1690. Our show is Cinema Smackdown, and today we are talking about actual experiences we've had in cinemas and related movies that we've seen on those days and how we really feel about them. Stop holding back on those Transformer and Luc Besson feelings, Tess. Really.
Those Transformer films are no Cutthroat Island.
I gotta say, they're comparable. The experience. I remember that Cutthroat Island, there was a huge, not controversy, but there was a huge issue with getting that film made because it was initially a Gina Davis project, but they needed a male co-star who was a big enough star to carry that film.
And there's no bigger star than Matthew Modine.
That's the point. And it was originally Michael Douglas.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was Michael Douglas for a long time. He was a producer on the film. It was his role. And at a certain point, I think he reread the script and said, wait, this is terrible. I'm going to go make Basic Instinct instead.
Let's grab that guy from the Kubrick film. Said no Hollywood producer ever.
Matthew Modine was a favorite actor of mine in the De Niro sense of he's a bit of a chameleon in his early career.
Oh, I like Matthew Modine a lot, but he's not a guy who opens a film for you if you're looking to.
He had a brief period where he was the guy, and they offered him. I mean, I do know his history. They offered him one of the biggest movies, and he said, "This is just glorifying war. I just made." No, that's right. It was at the same time that he got offered Full Metal Jacket. He was offered Top Gun as the lead. And he said, this is just raw war. Why would I want to be in this? And then took Full Metal Jacket instead. I think that was it.
Okay.
So I think Top Gun is 86 and Full Metal Jacket came out in...
I'm sure that was an excellent career move.
Honestly, in the annals of history, yes. In financial and, pocket change. The reality is, had he starred in Top Gun, it probably wouldn't have been a hit. Tom Cruise is a big piece of why people like that movie. And Matthew Modine...
I don't know. It's all Anthony Edwards for me.
Matthew Modine essentially would have been Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future. That's what it would have been. He would have
it could have been.
With much less happy charm. I've seen pretty much every Matthew Modine movie. The guy's a little stiff. And that's fine. That's the kind of characters he plays. But the whole point of the Maverick character is he's out there having a good time.
I don't know. He's pretty hilarious in that Robert Altman film.
The one with Julianne Moore?
Yeah. That scene.
That scene.
Yeah, he's all sunshine.
Yep. Yeah, no, he's actually a very stilted performance from him in that. A lot of his line readings feel like they're right off a cue card. But all that said, he is pretty great in Birdie and Vision Quest, which is an amazing 80s movie. Do you know Vision Quest, Tess?
No.
It's a film about a high school guy who wants to... He's a wrestler in high school, and his goal is to lose enough weight to wrestle at a much harder level than the weight he's at. It sounds like a strange premise, but the whole movie is him trying to make weight, and that's lowering it. And his best friend in the movie is, I'm not going to look it up, but I think his name is Michael Schofling, something like that. He is Mahler Ringwald's crush in 16 Candles.
Okay.
Remember that guy?
Yeah,
the
I
hot guy
remember
from
that guy,
16
Jake.
Candles. So he's also in Vision Quest, and that guy dropped out of film just a couple years later and became a carpenter.
Oh.
And that's what he does now. He's like a...
So he had Harrison Ford's career in reverse.
Exactly. That's right. He's the...
He's not a governor of a U.S. state.
Is that a Harrison Ford thing? Is Harrison Ford becoming governor somewhere I'm not aware of?
Can you... Name?
Can you successfully start as president and then become governor?
I mean, perhaps.
It's a bit of a demotion.
It would be a bit of a demotion. All right, so that's our Matthew Modine segue. Let me think. I should give you one more of my little anecdotes, and then we can move forward to. All right, here's my number one movie theater experience. I've probably told you this at some point in the past, Shane, but I will remind you this really happened to me. I went to see a screening on my own of a little movie called 2 Days in the Valley, which is a small crime film with Eric Stoltz, Jeff Daniels, James Spader's in it, and he's pretty good in it. But it's not a great movie. It's very mediocre.
Yeah, I've seen it and I've forgotten it utterly.
Sure. So I saw it in a cinema, probably at the Palace, I want to say, back when that was a cinema in downtown Montreal. And I was sitting in the cinema. It was a sparsely attended, probably afternoon screening in the dark, and some guy was sitting behind me, possibly one chair off, but almost directly behind me. And I noticed at a certain point in the movie, he started talking to the film quietly. And what he was doing was repeating the last few words every actor said whenever there was a pause. So if the actor said, "And that's why we have to arrest you," from behind me I would hear, "Arrest you." And this went on for 45 minutes.
That's great. That guy might have been like an alien life form who was learning how to speak human language.
Either that or he was an ADR technician earlier in his career. He'd fallen on hard times.
So this went on for a little while, and finally I'd had enough, and I turned and looked at him, and he was more or less an elderly, frail man. He was creepy looking as hell. And he was in the middle of repeating lines and staring up. I mean, really, his look was he was looking through the screen. That's what that was the expression on his face. And he was repeating words. And I said, "Hey, would you mind keeping it down?" To which, without turning to look at me, never taking his eyes off the screen, he said in a very clear voice, "I will cut your throat with a rusty razor."
Oh.
And I just thought, wow, you had that in your back pocket, huh?
I like
that idea, that phrase where you were ready.
Right next to the rusty razor, yeah.
Next to the actual rusty razor. I just immediately stood up, walked out of the cinema, went up to an usher and said, "There is a serial killer in your cinema. There is a guy in there who just said something to me so dead seriously, I wouldn't even approach him." Like I said, if you got 2 or 3 guys, go together, get him out of here. To which he just waved me off and said, "No problem. He's just drunk." He had no idea who this person was. And I was like, that guy's not drunk. That guy is a psychopath.
I like him.
Yep.
I'm into it.
You didn't want to sit directly in front of someone who was promising to cut your throat.
It was a magical experience. It took me 2 or 3 years to see the end of that movie. I got the hell out of
For
there.
you.
And yeah, 2 Days in the Valley. That's my big promo for 2 Days in the Valley. Anyway, that's a real life experience. And you too, folks.
Oh, the Palace.
Who never leave your house for fear of just that experience can now comfortably be told. Oh, by the way, this is a little bit of an offshoot, but I host a trivia show on Sunday and Monday nights at different bars, and I do a lot of weird research to write those trivia questions. And I read something about Elon Musk this week I really liked. Elon Musk made a comment about public transportation. I guess he was promoting his private cars. You can have a car. And he said this, "I don't understand why anyone would take public transportation. It sucks. it doesn't leave when you want it to leave. It doesn't go exactly where you want it to go. And the reality is, you're standing on there waiting with people, some of whom are probably serial killers. You can look that up. That's a real quote.
Oh my god.
So in Elon Musk's mind, he's like, I'm going to fix the world because there were so many serial killers.
You know who thinks that everybody around them is a serial killer?
Sociopaths.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, that man is an alien. There's no question.
Yeah. Not an alien, just alienatingly rich.
It is true. So yeah.
So I have my Palace Psycho story as well.
All right, let's hear it.
See, mine is more like 1001 Maniacs. So the basement of the palace is often where the B movies got tucked away, away from the more mainstream stuff that might make money upstairs.
Oh, I remember.
So same friend who worked at the theater, he told me about this film that had just opened, and it's like, you need to come and see this. It was week 2 of its run. He said, come on down to the palace, see this movie with me. It's an experience. The movie he was talking about was Evil Dead 2.
Oh, yeah.
So we went down to the good old, I think it was the Palace 6 it was in. And we got in there, and the ushers basically evacuated immediately. And I wouldn't be surprised if they locked the doors, because everyone in the theater... Week 1 of Evil Dead 2, it was already the cult movie of all time.
Right.
And everyone in the theater had already seen it, and they were maniacs for it.
Right.
And I've never heard a crowd go that crazy that often throughout a brand new movie. And, it was a completely new experience for me, but it included moments where, if it got particularly exciting, a guy had brought an air horn with him.
Oh my god.
To blast during the fun parts. And then there was the great...
I can tell you right now, I need to make this aside. If I'm in a cinema with you, and you being anyone in the world, and I hear an air horn, you're getting punched in the face. Like, that's not a joke. You will not get a warning.
I'm pretty sure some people in these crowds brought their own merchandising chainsaws. So, you do that at your own risk.
It's worth it.
One of my favorite moments was when Bruce Campbell gets ready for battle, has his groovy moment, as we all remember, at which point one delighted girl in the back screamed, "Your place, then mine!" Because Bruce Campbell is just that sexy.
Yeah,
he's alright.
Nothing like a really protruding chin on a fellow.
Well, that's the name of his autobiography.
Yeah,
what if chins could kill? Yeah.
I do have you talked about Avengers Endgame. I have a slightly amusing anecdote about that, and that will allow me to say some of my thoughts on Avengers Endgame.
You got it.
So I also went to see Avengers Endgame relatively recently, and I have a busy life, and I like to combine things in my life so that I don't have to spend a lot of different times doing different things.
Right.
So a friend of mine had asked me to come to Avengers Endgame with them, and I invited along a person with whom I have, somewhat liaised.
An intimate relationship.
An intimate liaison relationship. I just like the word liaison. Anyway. And she was kind of like, oh, I haven't really seen a lot of the Avengers movies. I was like, it'll be fine. I just didn't want to have to plan another date on top of it, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, cool, it'll be great, it'll be fine. Avengers Endgame is basically every other Marvel movie, the movie. If you haven't seen the other Marvel movies, nothing in this movie will make any sense to you.
That's true.
And this person also doesn't really speak English that well. They're francophone.
You're a monster.
Yeah, so this is an abusive relationship is what you're telling us.
But by the way, as a side to the same exact experience, I was in a cinema watching Avengers Endgame, and there was a young lady sitting next to me and a guy sitting next to her, and for the first 30 minutes of the movie, every time an actor appeared on screen for the first time, he would turn to her and go, "That's Steve Rogers. He's Captain America."
This is really like what my experience was like. So I didn't hate Avengers Endgame, but didn't really like it. Mm-hmm. I felt a lot of it was just wasted time. The first fucking 30 minutes of the movie where we're all supposed to be masturbating over how sad it is that everyone's dead. Even though we know they're all coming back.
You are all heart.
It is grief porn.
coming back. It's a waste of my goddamn time.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie is just like, Marvel movies, the highlight reel kind of thing. It's kind of fun, but like, but definitely the fact that I was sitting there feeling guilty. It's 3 hours long.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there feeling guilty about having forced this person to come to this movie that they clearly don't get any, like, there's no way you can understand anything about that movie having not seen all the other Marvel movies.
So how long have you been...
I didn't know.
How long have you two been broken up?
Since about hour 2.
It was mid-movie, yeah.
Yeah.
So I kept being like, are you okay? Are you bored? And she just kept being like, no, it's fine. But I just was like, oh, that's definitely not okay.
To be fair, if I had never seen an Avengers film, any of these Marvel movies, the first 45 minutes would have been kind of intriguing because it is a dark drama, and then the spectacle of the rest of the film, having not seen another one, would have been...
No,
I would have been confused.
If you had never seen any of the previous Marvel films, the first opening of this film is a bunch of heroes that get together to decapitate a farmer.
A peaceful farmer just kind of living his life.
I really like that. I think it should be watched first now. Just for that very reason. This should be the Phantom Menace of the Marvel films. I love it. The decapitation of a peaceful farmer. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That should be the title of our episode today.
Anyway, yeah, so I didn't really like it at all.
Well, I will say, for my money, I like shocking moments or big moments that are allowed to be the moment that matters. And I will say that everything that followed ruined this for me. And I won't fully spoil this, but there's a scene in this movie where Captain America picks something up and hits somebody with it. Mm-hmm. If he had picked that thing up, hit that character with it, and won the fight and the movie was over, it would be my favorite superhero movie.
Yeah. I felt that there were a lot of wasted moments, like sort of fan servicey moments that are just kind of thrown in to be fan service.
No, absolutely.
And
but
then
it
you're
was that movie more than any.
Okay, great.
But my point being with that, if he had hit him, he had won the fight, the movie had ended, we all would have been like, oh my god, is that really it? Mm-hmm. But instead, they said, well, he doesn't really win the fight in that scene, and therefore we have to have the 100-character scene, which I'm not looking forward to, which of course means just 30 more minutes of fights. It's
bullshit.
Like, I don't like
it's not
that
fights,
stuff.
It's just bullshit.
I like character moments.
And then they have these embarrassing women empowerment fan service scenes that are embarrassing.
Yeah, agreed.
Because the Marvel movies, there's been one Marvel woman superhero in all of the 85,000 Marvel films. Okay, Marvel
Making them
doesn't have a
stand
good
next to each
track
other
record.
really...
So they're just like, let's scrape up all the random female side characters we have, put them all in a row, and have this like women power, girl power glamour shot. It was embarrassing. I cringed throughout this part of the movie.
All right. Well, speaking of cringing, we're gonna take a quick ad break.
Yay.
It's a fun show. You have an anecdote you need to tell, right?
I do have a major
so let's
one.
do that now.
Yeah.
Get it out.
The climactic
Well, I didn't know if we do it first.
film experience for me.
We've got 15, well,
Yeah,
like 12
it's a
minutes.
lengthier one though, so I does. It's a lengthier one, which is why I want to make sure I have time to plow through it.
We could have done it early, but I'm glad you got something, Tess. That we actually got some talk out of you and a few experiences, and that was a fun story. You being a horrible
torturing someone.
It was way worse than I thought.
I don't understand why the cartoon raccoon is
talking. You don't really
talking.
know what's going on. This one was not fun if you didn't know what was going on.
Honestly, I'm trying to think about it in that perspective. It's spectacular looking.
Yeah.
So, and it depends if that person can handle.
But it's also like 3 hours long.
Yes.
It's not like, fun hour and a half film, you know?
I let people I saw it with know. It's 3 hours. Be prepared. Here we go. We're back on TGL 1690s Cinema Smackdown. We're talking about real-life experiences we've had in movie cinemas. Shane, you got another one for us?
Yes, I have my ultimate theater-going experience of all time.
Your end game?
My end game, indeed. Good number of years ago, back when this town had more repertory theaters, among the unusual stuff you could go see included some of the hallmarks of the porno chic era. This is when the early days of mainstreaming of porn, when the porn films were actually trying hard to actually make a real film in amongst all the sex. So you got, well, Deep Throat is a bad example of that. It's a crap film, but that was sort of the breakout one. But then there were more artistically minded ones like Cafe Flesh, The Devil and Miss Jones, etc. So my friend Mike and I, we went to a number of rep theaters and art houses to see these films, which were part of this cinema history. I had the book, Danny Peary's book, The Guide for the Film Fanatic.
Yeah.
And he talks about all films equally, whether it's sleaze, classics, or the occasional porn film. So we're also crossing off films from that list.
And it's important to mention, at the time you saw this, there was no other...
Oh yeah, we had no option. Yeah, there was no internet to go to. There was, at best, the back room of your mom and pop video store, and you were at the mercy of the garbage they kept there.
Right, and very few of them at the time that this was going on were real art house video stores. You couldn't find a curated pornography.
No, exactly. You would occasionally find a classic mixed in with more descriptive titles, right, which I won't mention because they're not fit for air. Right. So yeah, we did our best to try and catch some of these cornerstones of the genre, if you will. One of the ones that eluded us for the longest time was probably one of the most famous ones, which is Behind the Green Door with Marilyn Chambers. And then I opened the newspaper, back when there were newspapers, if you remember those things. And there was back when they had ads for porno movies, because we had porn theaters in town. And it turns out one of the porn theaters was running, as part of a double bill, Behind the Green Door. And we thought, well, look, never been to a porn theater, have never been since, but let's go down and catch Behind the Green Door, because I think this is the only way we're going to get to see it. The thing about porn theaters is that they don't have running times or start times for movies, because they're just running a loop. You walk in, you watch until you're satisfied you've seen enough, and then you leave, because it's porn and no one really cares. But we want to watch it as a proper movie. So I said, okay, well, there's no set time this is going to start. So I guess we better go for when the theater opens. Mm-hmm. So that was 10 a.m.
Oh my God.
So we hauled our ass downtown from the West Island for 10 a.m. I was disappointed to find that it was full movie price to go see a porno movie. I was hoping for a bit of a discount, but no. It was like a regular movie price. It's like, oh, great. We got in there, sat down, and realized the movie has already started. I guess the projectionist showed up early and just started the projector and went to get coffee.
Right.
So we missed the plot part of Behind the Green Door. Now, most people walking into a porn theater, they would say, oh, great, we walked in for the good part. It's like, no, we missed all the setup for this classic, fairly artfully shot little exploitation-y porn movie. So, now, the porn theater experience, I should mention, it was not what I expected. I was worried it was going to be a bunch of degenerates masturbating in the theater. Out the corner yard, you see Paul Rubens just flogging away. It wasn't that, though. It was mostly businessmen coming in on their break or on their lunch hour in suits and ties, sitting down very quietly. Everyone, you could tell everyone was embarrassed to be there. They would stay for 10, 15 minutes. I didn't see anyone fiddling about, and then they would quietly leave, and you could hear a pin drop the whole time.
It's like even more depressing than what I thought it might be.
Oh yeah, no, it is kind of depressing and sad. So we got to the end of what chunk we saw of Behind the Green Door, and I said to Mike, I said, look, I paid good money to see all of Behind the Green Door. I am staying until I've seen the beginning of this film. Which meant we had to sit through the entire second feature film, which Mike was not too keen to do. Not quite the classic of Behind the Green Door. This one was called Stud Hunters. It was late 70s, early 80s, typical schlocky porno, the highlight of which is a guy going at it with a inflatable plastic doll. It was not the class act of the previous film. Mike, in rebellion of this, promptly fell asleep. So I sat there basically alone next to my sleeping friend watching Stud Hunters for an hour and a half. And then in the climactic sex scene of Stud Hunters, there's a couple banging away on a bed, doggy style, at which point, in their enthusiasm, they break the bed. Now, this was not part of the plot. This was something that happened in the movie. You could tell it was an outtake. There's a moment where the guy actually turns to the camera with a look on his face like, oops, did we just break the bed? And then there's a hard edit. And then where they decided, what are we going to do? We just broke the bed. Say, let's run with it. So it comes back to the same shot after this hard edit where the woman improvises a line saying, you broke my bed. So the moment that they break the bed, again, dead silence cinema, I burst out laughing so hard. It was the funniest thing I've seen in a movie theater. The only comparable moment is Sam Jackson and the shark.
Right.
In Deep Blue Sea. That was the other.
That's a classic.
That was the other fall out of my seat moment in a movie theater. So Mike had been asleep for about an hour at this point, resting his head in his hand with his thumb jammed in his eye. So I wake him up screaming with laughter. And he starts to, what? Oh, my eye! Which made me laugh even harder. Meanwhile, there's other men in this theater, all embarrassed to be there, just quiet as mice. It's like, what is with these rambunctious guys in the fourth row who are screaming with laughter and screaming in pain? So we muddled our way through Stud Hunters, and we did get to see the beginning of Behind the Green Door, which was all the plot and setup, at which point we walked out, which must have seemed odd to the current roster of clients in the theater, since it's like, but the good part's starting. You're what? It's like, we must have seemed like guys, well, we didn't know this was going to be a porno movie.
That's pretty good. I like that story. That's a good cinema story in that sense of having a weird experience. I think it's worth mentioning that if I'm not looking this up right now, but I believe, isn't Behind the Green Door the Mitchell brothers?
Yeah, the Mitchell brothers, yeah.
And didn't they famously murder each other?
One murdered the other, yes.
A couple years later over drugs and insanity. Because, of course, they made a lot of money, and they spent it all on cocaine.
Yeah.
And they had a kind of a rough time of it. There is a Mitchell brothers biopic starring the Estevez brothers, which is to say Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen.
Right.
Where, shockingly, Charlie Sheen is the crazier of the two.
No!
I don't really recall which one tops the other, but it's pretty funny. I'm pretty sure that's one of the multiple Emilio Estevez directed films, too. I think it was a film all he does now, he doesn't appear in other people's movies. He just, once every 3 to 5 years, Emilio Estevez just makes a little personal movie now. He made one about a guy taking a long walk on a mountain. He made one about the Kennedy assassination, which was all about the hospital they brought him to. These are the kind of films he's making. He's just this real quiet, little, happy filmmaker who just gets a lot of celebrities to come in and do cameos for him. So Emilio Estevez ended up with a very strange career, as far as I'm concerned. Because he was not quite A-list, but pretty close for a few years there. And he certainly has a better reputation than his brother at this point.
Well, who doesn't? But
I'm a more bankable star right now than Charlie Sheen.
But so Montreal used to be quite the haven for porn theaters back in the day. Back when that was a viable way to consume pornography. We're down to one, Cinema L'Amour, which shockingly is still open. That stuns me that there's enough of a market to even keep one porn theater open.
It's on Saint Laurent Street. I walk past it all the time, and on the marquee it says Monday and Tuesdays, couples are admitted for free. To which I've always thought, there's nothing quite like you go on a Tinder date and what do you got lined up for it?
Well, you know what's free.
No, I start this way. Okay, what's the worst Tinder date you could go on? You meet up with someone and they go, surprise, I brought you to a porn theater. But double surprise, it's the night when it's free. It's even worse.
So you're taking dating tips from Robert De Niro and Taxi Driver now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That man knew what he was doing. I mean, just
it worked.
Yeah. I mean,
ultimately,
he had the best hairstylist and the best ideas. So.
There's only one way to win over Sybil Shepherd: take her to a porn theater or be Peter Bogdanovich. So.
For a moment, I thought you said or beat Peter Bogdanovich.
Oh, you could do that too.
Which I do recommend.
Yeah.
That man should be beaten. He's hard to take.
Probably be in favor of that now too.
Yeah, not a big fan. His filmography is one movie I liked and about 27 that annoyed me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one good movie would be? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Oh, I'm trying to remember the name now.
The Academy Award winner.
Oh, it's slipping my mind. I've seen it.
It's Paper Moon.
Oh, Paper Moon. Okay, I was thinking of the
other
other one.
his Boris Karloff movie.
Oh, well, that one too. Actually, I like Targets.
Which I have not seen.
Oh, okay.
To this day. It's one of those little holes in my filmography, but I do think Paper Moon is shockingly good. As a 70s black and white character-driven con artist movie, it's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason. Did she win the Academy Award?
I think so. Yeah, Tatum O'Neal. Yeah.
Yep, that had no negative effect on her. Yeah. She did not come away with that with a terrible idea of how to behave for the rest of her life. For anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just Google Tatum O'Neal biography and see how the rest of her career went. She's had a bit of a rough patch following Paper Moon. Then again, she's
a Patty Hearst of the O'Neal family.
Yeah, she had a rough time with it. Well, we just have about a minute left here. Any last thoughts, Tess, on movie theater experiences?
None that will take less than a minute to convey.
Are you sure? I mean, we already know you're a pretty terrible date, so...
Yeah, I'm terrible in a lot of ways.
I've only got my very, very brief one I'll touch on, which is me being the worst person in the cinema. Shane and I, we attended the premiere day that The Matrix Revolutions came out, and by the time we'd seen Matrix Reloaded, I was so checked out. Mm-hmm. So when we actually kind of hilariously went to see the third film, with me thinking, I don't even care what happens in this. We sat in the cinema. It's a pretty calm experience, but when the movie ended, the gentleman sitting next to me turned to me and said, "You ruined this movie for me." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You were quietly laughing at everything." and I didn't remember doing that, but I'm sure he was right. I just sat there laughing.
No, well, there was a moment when they were killing 1 billion robots, and it was so extreme, we both laughed, because it was kind of funny.
But to be fair, I've done that many times for a lot of movies, where everybody's so intensely into it, and I'm cracking up in the theater.
Alright, we gotta go. I'm Michael Brody. I've been joined today by Shane Simmons and Tess McCrae.
What?
And we are out of here for the moment. We're out of time. Thanks for listening in, everybody. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but we were out. There we go. There's the news. And as I said, no follow-up act.
Huh, yeah.
Yeah, she just barely cares. And she's the great one, by the way. She's the
good one?
She's the great one. She's actually delightful. It's the guy who precedes us who's rough. He's gotten worse, too.
Yeah, I think he might have a drug problem.
I like your optimism with the word might. Alright, let's
as of fall 2019, students will have the opportunity to learn about AI in a variety of subjects.
We're good to go.
General education.
All the dials are in the right places.
Which all CGEP students must take.
Looks good to me.